Okay, for us to get a visual representation of how the OSI model works on each layer, I will be using this simulation from the netseal.net. This is a great simulation where you can see how information goes through each layer and what data is added to the packets on each layer. Okay, the OSI model has 7 different layers on each node. There's 7 different layers on the sending node, and there's 7 different nodes on the receiving node. These 3 nodes over here, these are the nodes that are going to be corresponding to these 2 routers. Okay, when you send an information, each layer talks to the corresponding layer on the destination node. We will see how this works on throughout our simulation. Okay, let's look at how different layers works on the OSI protocol stack. What we are doing here is we are sending an email using an email application. It can be Outlook, it can be a web browser using email applications. We're sending an email from this laptop to the receiving node, this server over here. It has to go through a physical medium, Ethernet LAN, and it has to go through these 2 routers. So the first layer we are going to look at is the application layer. Application layer is the layer the closest to the user, and application layer is responsible of providing support and service to applications that require network resources. For an example, in this example, the application that we are using is, let's say, Outlook, or a web browser that you can send an email. Okay, this is the layer, this is the top layer that is the user actually interacting with. So you open different type of application, and that application can be a web browser, Outlook, and this is the actual application that you are actually working on to open a web page, or to send files, or to send email. Okay, the next layer is the presentation layer. Presentation layer is responsible to transform data between the format that required for the network and the format that required by the application layer. For an example, Outlook might be using different type of data, so the presentation layer is responsible for transforming this information that can be read by the specific application. And this layer is the layer that actually is the operating system is working on. Operating system is taking care of transferring the data received by the session layer, and then using the presentation layer, it will convert the data that received to a data that can be read by a specific application. Okay, next layer we are looking at is the session layer. The session layer allows application running on different computers to communicate using a connection that is called a dialog. Okay, the session layer is responsible for creating a session between you, this laptop, and the receiving node, the server. So as you can see, for our email packet we have 3 headers added so far. Okay, the next layer we'll look at here is the transport layer. Transport layer, also known as the end-to-end layer, is responsible for ensuring reliable data delivery so that the packets arrive at the destination without any errors. Also, this layer will decide how much information you should send. For an example, on this example, this layer will decide how much information of this email will send to the email server and how much information you will receive back from the server. Okay, the next layer we'll look at here is the network layer. Network layer is actually responsible for adding the destination IP address and the source IP address. For this example, the source IP address will added to the packet is 133.88.6.4, and the destination IP address will added is 152.8.7.11. Also remember, network layer is the layer actually your routers operate at. For an example, you might have a router at home, a wireless router. There are other routers on this example. This is a router here, this is a router here. So this is the layer actually the routers actually work on. Okay, the next layer we'll look at here is the data link layer. Data link layer is responsible for transferring data between devices. For incoming data, it organizes the ones and zeros from the physical layer into a structured unit called frames. Data link layer is the layer that actually your switches work on. So you can communicate with each other back and forth, and this is the layer responsible for those type of communications. Okay, let's look at the next layer. This is the bottom layer. This is the physical layer. The physical layer is responsible for connecting different devices on a network. For example, your computer might be connected to a router using a wireless medium, or it might be connected to through a Cat5 cable. It might be connected to a crossover cable. So this is the physical medium that connect different computers or different nodes on a network. So this layer is responsible for transmission and receiving of bits from one computer to another computer. For an example, some of the devices found at the physical layer is the transceiver, a media access unit, the part of a network adapter that sends and receives signals over the network media converter, converts one media signal to another type of a media, a repeater will amplifies the signal to extend the maximum allowable distance for a media type, a hub works on a physical layer. A hub is a multi-point repeater. This is deployed as a central point of a connecting for network segments through wires in using the star topology. A modem, if you remember the modems that we used to use, a modem, a device that converts between digital and analog signals for transmission. So now you can see on this packet there are 7 added to the packet from all these different layers we looked at through application layer, presentation layer, session layer, transport layer, network layer, data link layer, finally the physical layer. Okay, let's see what happened to the packet next. The packet is sent from the laptop to the first router. Okay, there are a few different layers on the router we mentioned. Okay, data link layer and the network layer, also the physical layer. The router removes the data link information and send it to the network layer. The network layer uses the destination IP address and determine where to send the packet next. If this is only happens if you have routers in between your network through the receiving end. And then the router encapsulate the data with the proper data link information and send it back to the physical layer through to the next router. On this router, you will see the packet was dropped last because of the sender transport layer had an acknowledgement issue, and it was dropped. This would not happen all the time. Packet is sent back to the router. Okay, and same process we looked before. Go through the data link layer, network layer, send it back, and now it sends to the server. On this session, it was dropped. It says in this example, Ethernet data link layer does. When the sending layer does not receive an acknowledgement from the receiver's layer, it resends the frame. So what happened here was the sending layer did not receive acknowledgement saying okay, the packet was delivered to the email server. So that didn't happen. So it will resend the frame back from the router back to the server. Okay. Now you will see what happened to each layer of the receiving node. Physical layer will receive the packet, okay, and the data link layer removes the data link header. Network layer removes the IP header, destination IP and the receiving IP address. Transport layer will reassemble the data back into the original data and use the port number, on this case the port number 25, to determine which application to send the data. So it's the email application. The session will determine which communication stream this data is belong to. Okay, and here's the presentation layer. Presentation layer use the information and convert the data that can be read by the application. Use this information. For an example, let's say we are using Outlook, so it used the Outlook to decide what application that can be read this data. Okay, application receive the SMTP data, and here where you can actually see your email in clear text. Okay, hopefully this helped you to better understand of how the OSI model worked.